variants of Viewpoint. The work of Hampden Turner and Trompenaars makes clear that the West is no monolith concerning issue of independence versus interdependence. There are also substantial regularities to the differences found in the Western countries. In general, the Mediterranean countries plus Belgium and Germany are intermediate between the East Asian countries on the one hand and the countries most heavily influenced by the Protestant Anglo-Saxon culture on the other. There is a more regularity even than that. Someone has said, the idea moves west, meaning that the values of individuality, freedom, rationality, and universalism became progressively more dominant and articulated as civilization moved westward from its origin in the Fertile Crescent. I see. The Babylonians codified and universalized the law. The Israelites emphasized individual distinctiveness. The Greeks valued individuality even more and added a commitment to personal freedom, the spirit of debate, and formal logic. The Romans brought a gift for rational organization and something resembling the Chinese genius for technological achievement, and after a triumph lasting almost a millennium, their successors, the Italians, rediscovered these values and built on the accomplishments of the Greek and Roman eras. Sure. The Protestant Reformation, beginning in Germany and Switzerland and largely bypassing France and Belgium, added individual responsibility and definition of the work as a sacred activity. The Reformation also brought a weekend commitment to the family and other in-groups, coupled with a greater willingness to trust out groups and have dealing with their members. Sure. These values were all intensified in the Calvinist subcultures of Britain, including Puritans and Presbyterians whose egalitarian ideology laid the groundwork for the government of the United States. Sure. Thomas Jefferson was merely paraphrasing the Puritan sympathizer John Locke when he wrote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, with a certain inalienable rights, that amongst these are life, liberty, blah blah blah." This is a Declaration of Independence, right? Yeah. The Hampden Turner and Trompenaars findings for social values, as well as those of Hotstead, tracks this east-west ideological journey almost exactly. The further to the west a given country lies, the greater in general that country's endorsement of the independent values. Moreover, these differences among European cultures are reflected in the successor subcultures in the United States, a fact documented in the immigrant cultural histories by scholars such as economist Thomas Sowell. I once knew a very distinguished and well-placed social scientist, a crusty Scottish-American Presbyterian steeped in the Calvinist rectitude. He had a son who was also a social scientist and who had to struggle from time to time to sustain his career during the 1970s, When jobs were scarce in the US, my colleague would sometimes state proudly that although it would have been easy for him to do so, he had never intervened to help his son's situation. The colleagues' Anglo-Saxon Protestant friends would nod their approval of the justice of this stance in the face of personal pain they knew the college had experienced. His Jewish and Catholic colleagues, with their more continental values, would share in the shocked disbelief at his lack of family feeling, at a level slightly more scientific than the anecdote. We generally find that it is the white Protestants among the American participants in our studies who show the most Western patterns of the behavior, and the Catholic and the minority group members, including African Americans and Hispanics, are shifted somewhat toward Eastern patterns. Yeah, connection, right? There are also major differences among Eastern cultures in all sorts of important social behavior and values, some of which are related to independence versus interdependence. Interdependence is pretty much Japanese society, right? There are also major differences among Eastern cultures in all sorts of important social behaviors and values, some of which are related to independence versus interdependence. See. I was in China in 1982 at the tail end of the Cultural Revolution. The country seemed extremely exotic in both its traditional aspects and its communist-imposed aspect. This was well before a Starbucks was installed in the Forbidden City. Okay, yes. The first Western play to be performed in Beijing since the revolution was mounted while I was there. It was Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman. The choice seemed very strange. I regarded the play as being not merely high Western in the character, but distinctly American. Its central figure is a salesman, a man way out there in the blue, riding on the smile and a sure shine. To my astonishment, the play was a tremendous success. But Arthur Miller, who had come to China to collaborate on the production of the play, provided us a satisfactory reason for its reception. The play is about family, yeah, he said, and the Chinese invented family. He might have added that the play is also about face, the face, the organ, face of human, right? Or the need to have the respect of the community, and the Chinese also invented face. The Japanese have perhaps as much concern with the face as do the Chinese, but probably less involvement with the immediate family and more commitment to the corporation business, right? There are other marked differences between the Japanese and the Chinese. The sociologist Robert Bellah, the philosopher Hajime Nakamura, the psychologist Dora Dien, and the social philosopher Lin Yutang, among many others, have detailed some of these differences. Those social constraints are, in general, greater on both Chinese and Japanese than the Westerners. The constraints come primarily from the authorities in the case of the Chinese and chiefly from peers in the case of Japanese. Yes, Chinese and chiefly from peers in the case of Japanese. Yeah. Control in Chinese classroom, for example, is achieved by the teacher, but by classmate in Japan. Yeah, sure, of course, yeah, I fully agree with you. Dora Dien has written that the Chinese emphasize the particular dyadic two-person relationship while retaining their individuality, whereas the Japanese tend to submerge themselves in the group. Yes. Though both Chinese and Japanese are required to conform to more smoothly through their daily lives, the Chinese are said to shake under the requirement and the Japanese actually to enjoy them. The Japanese are held to share with the Germans and the Dutch a need for order in all aspects, spheres of their lives. The Chinese share the Mediterranean, a more relaxed approach to life. Yeah. It is sometimes argued that one particular type of social relationship is unique to the Japanese. This is amae, a concept discussed at length by the Japanese psychoanalyst Takeo Doi. Amae describes a relationship in which an inferior, a child or employee, for example, is allowed to engage in inappropriate behavior, to ask for an expensive toy, or to request a promotion at the time not justified by the company policy, as an expression of the confidence that the relationship is sufficiently close that the superior will be indulgent. No way. Amae facilitates the relationship, enhancing trust between the two parties and cementing bonds. Though these results come at some cost to the autonomy of the inferior. Sure. The very real difference among the Eastern cultures and among Western cultures, however, shouldn't blind us to the fact that the East and West are, in general, quite different from each other with respect to a great many centrally important values and social psychological attributes. Of course, it is obvious.